Christian Jules LeBlanc had stood on hundreds of sets, hit his mark thousands of times, and slipped into Michael Baldwin's polished suits so often they felt like a second skin. But even after decades on The Young and the Restless, the anniversary of his debut always stirred something inside him. Nostalgia, gratitude, and occasionally a shiver of the panic he once felt long ago. Panic so sharp and so vivid that he could still hear his younger self whispering, "This is it. Time to look for a new job, buddy." It all came flooding back the afternoon he arrived at the CBS studio for a special interview honoring his milestone. The crew had set up a small retrospective space, old scripts with dog-eared pages, photos of Christian from his early days as the dark, complicated Michael Baldwin, and behind-the-scenes snapshots fans had never seen. The lights were warm. The cameras were ready. But Christian's mind was in another decade entirely. He eased into the chair, smoothing the lapel of his blazer, and laughed softly as the producer asked about his first days on the show. "My first week," Christian repeated. "Oh, I remember it like it was yesterday, and trust me, that's not always the case anymore." The crew chuckled. Christian leaned back, letting himself slip fully into the memory. It was a humid summer day when he first walked into the soundstage as Michael. He'd arrived hours early, because he couldn't shake the feeling that daytime television was a world he wasn't entirely prepared for. He knew primetime. He knew theater. But soaps. Soap actors worked at lightning speed. They filmed an entire episode in a day. They memorized monologues the length of small novels. They could switch from heartbreak to humor in a single take. And Christian, young and eager, worried he wasn't ready for that kind of machine. That morning, he'd been handed rewrites of rewrites. "We're adjusting the tone," the writers said. "We're changing direction," the director added. Everyone seemed excited, but Christian's stomach twisted. He barely knew the original lines, let alone the new ones. His palms were sweating so badly that the pages stuck together. Then it happened. Just before shooting, one of the producers called him aside and said, "Christian, we love what you're doing. Really. But we might be shifting Michael, making him darker, maybe less sympathetic, maybe more sympathetic. Honestly, we're not sure yet. Just go with your instincts." Christian nodded, but inside he was screaming. "How do I play a character whose direction is, we'll know it when we see it," he remembered thinking. "I'm about to tank this job before it even starts." The memory still made him shake his head with a smile. "And then," Christian continued during the interview, "we get to the scene. It's my big lawyer moment, my first courtroom confrontation. I open my mouth and nothing, absolutely nothing comes out." The crew laughed, and Christian laughed with them, though the truth was, in the moment, it hadn't been funny at all. He remembered the director staring at him, the judge staring at him, the actress playing Christine, Lauralee Bell, trying desperately not to break character as he struggled like a fish out of water. Finally, Christian blurted something that was not in the script, something that made no sense whatsoever. The dialogue was supposed to be sharp, cutting, manipulative. Instead, he delivered a line that sounded more like a confused barista trying to remember a customer's coffee order. When the director yelled, "Cut," Christian was certain the next words would be, "And cut him from the show while we're at it." He'd stepped off the set, heart pounding, and whispered to himself, "It's time to look for a new job. This one's over." "Well," Christian told the anniversary crew, eyes sparkling, "I didn't quit and they didn't fire me. Turns out they actually liked that I was trying things. They said, 'He's brave, he's bold, he's making choices.' And I thought, is forgetting all my lines considered making a choice? But hey, if it worked, it worked." He shook his head again, marveling at how such a disastrous moment had become a turning point. "That day taught me something," he said. "Michael wasn't supposed to be perfect. He wasn't even supposed to be likable at first. He was messy, unpredictable, dangerous. Losing the lines accidentally made him more interesting." What Christian didn't expect was how the character would grow, how the villain would evolve into a complicated hero, how he'd find redemption through relationships, love, and self-reflection, how fans would fall in love with Michael's imperfections. As the interview continued, Christian walked through some of the character's most iconic moments. The rivalries, the courtroom battles, the emotional twists with Lauren, the long arc of healing and forgiveness. He spoke about how Michael's journey had paralleled his own growth as an actor. "I went from thinking I was about to be fired," he said, "to being part of one of the most extraordinary families in television." Then the producer asked, "Do you ever think about that moment now, the one where you thought you'd blown it?" Christian nodded thoughtfully. "All the time. It reminds me to stay humble. It reminds me how hard this work can be. And it reminds me that sometimes the best things come from the moments when you think everything is falling apart." He paused, leaning forward in his chair. "You know," he added softly, "if I could tell my younger self something in that moment, right after I forgot all those lines, I'd say, 'Don't run, don't panic. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of a chapter you can't even imagine yet.'" The studio was quiet. Then Christian grinned. Of course, my younger self wouldn't have listened. He would have said, "Are you kidding? They're definitely firing me." But hey, growth takes time. The crew laughed again, the tension breaking, but the heart of the story lingered. As the interview wrapped, Christian looked at the photographs around him, snapshots of decades of storytelling, decades of challenges, friendships, and triumphs. "It's been a wild ride," he said. "Michael Baldwin changed my life. The young and the restless changed my life, and I'm grateful every single day that I didn't let fear make me walk away." He stood, straightened his jacket, and smiled at the set one more time. "Now," he joked, "if I forget my lines again after all these years, don't tell anyone. Let's just call it character development." And with that, Christian Jules LeBlanc, once the young actor terrified he'd lose his job, walked off stage with the confidence of a man who had become a legend.